The Carling Cup and the EPL in the bag. Can they clinch the English FA Cup this weekend?
Kevin De Bruyne, Jesus! Manchester City in front after 3 minutes. It's a brilliant ball in. Gabriel Jesus just had to divert it beyond Ryan and did exactly that. Manchester City lead the semi-final and we've barely begun. 3 minutes were indicated, 3 minutes have been played. Manchester City will be in the FA Cup final shortly. Manchester City will be back here at Wembley in the FA Cup final. The quadruple is still on. Deeney flashed it! Watford were 2-0 down. It's 2-2. There is a sting in the tail, and we're going to extra time. Deulofeu into the penalty area. Deulofeu steers the ball past John Roddy. What an impact he has made, and what a remarkable fight back. Watford were 2-0 down. They now lead by 3-2 as they eye a potential first FA Cup final in 35 years. What a finish! The 2 minutes are complete. Michael Oliver blows his whistle. The Wolves players sink in despair to their feet. The Watford players celebrate because Watford are in their first cup final since 1984, and they've done it the hard way. They've come from 2-0 down, but they will play Manchester City on May the 18th in what was an epic semi-final.
The summer window is officially open in England and players have already made their intentions clear of leaving their clubs. One of those players is
Hazard batted it low, and Hazard rifles the ball past Begovic and pumped it by Griezmann.
And who wins the Bundesliga title this season? Is it going to be Dortmund or Bayern Munich?
Thiago delivers, and Hummels has scored to give Bayern the early lead into Klassiker.
Equalising goal! Marco Reus has got the touch. Dortmund are back from 2 behind to level it.
Our mistake by Zagadou. Lewandowski is in, and Robert Lewandowski has scored Bundesliga goal number 200, and it might just be taking his current employers towards a title at the expense of his former club.
Also, the normalization special competition has reached a stage where dropping points can undo some top teams. We look ahead to what promises to be an exciting week with matchday 13 games across the country. This is the Locker Room. Welcome. Well, check it out. Time is 16 minutes past the hour of 1. This is Joy 99.7 FM. My name is Benedict Tosu. Welcome to Locker Room here on your superstation Joy 99.7 FM. Doing this for my colleague George Adu Jr. From now till the hour of 2 is all about sports, football, everything that you need to know going into a busy weekend. So from here, the local scene and then international stage, everywhere is covered for you this afternoon on the show. You know the drill. What you have to do is join us via our studio lines. That's our WhatsApp line, which is 0244-340-437, 0244-340-437. You can also post your comments on our Facebook page. That's Joy 99.7 FM. You can do same on Twitter at Joy 99.7 FM. My personal Twitter handle is at Kwesi Benedict. Alright, so this weekend it's the penultimate matches in the special competition, and that will be honored across the country with some mouth-watering encounters. Well, in Premier A, no team has qualified with the race getting intense. Where Kumasi Asante Kotoko, Mediama Diana Stars are now Asante Kotoko must win their remaining 2 games or forget about making the next stage. That's the semi-finals. Well, there is more in this preview put together by my colleague Moses Yabua.
As the NC Special Competition Group Stage gradually heads to its climax, Kumasi Asante Kotoko, who ended their winless run in midweek, will be hoping to build on that and qualify from Pool A, and their clash with top of the group Mediama will be decisive as the Mauves and Yellows are just a point above the Porcupine Warriors. Kotoko cannot afford any slipper because if they do, third place Ashanti Gold, who are high on their heels, could leapfrog them if Ash Gold record a win at home over fifth place Bechem United. Adiana Stars will journey to Techiman to take on 11 Wonders. In the Southern Zone, second place Karila United, who are looking very likely to make the semi-finals, host Dreams FC. Liberty Professionals, who are also in a good spot to qualify, play away to Dwarfs. In Thailand, host Wafa, and Elimina Sharks face already qualified Hearts Folk at the Accra Sports Stadium.
All right, so that was my colleague Moses Yabua with what to expect this weekend in the normalization special competition. Of course, with specific attention on Kumasi Asante Kotoko. They play at home to Mediema SC and they need to win that game at all costs if they are to qualify for the next stage of the competition. That's the semi-finals. Accra Hearts of Oak have already made it. So big weekend for all the clubs. And just to give you an idea of how the table is, you look at Group A, we have Mediema SC. They are leading with 19 points and a point separating Mediema and Asante Kotoko. 18 points for the Porcupine Warriors. Ashanti Gold are third with 17 points, as well as Aduana Stars. They are fifth. They are fourth with 15 points, and then we have Bichim United fifth with 14 points. We have 11 Wonders are sixth with 11 points, and Bekum Chelsea down there with just 5 points. So it tells you the kind of league they are having in Premier A. Very intense, is really getting interesting in there. But Accra Hearts of Oak, they actually became the first team to book qualification to the semi-finals after their midweek win over Karela at the Accra Sports Stadium. So you look at Group B, this is how the standings are. The Phobians are leading with 25 points and Karela are second with 21 points. We have Liberty Professionals, they are third with 19 points, and then Elmina Sharks are fourth with 18 points. Wafa are fifth with also with 18 points. So it's just goal difference between Liberty and Wafa, and then Ebuson Doves are sixth with 11 points. Seventh is Dreams FC 10 points, and then Inter Allies are eighth. They are bottom of Premier B with just 6 points. And of course, away from the normalization special competition, we have to deal with some continental football issues because the CAF Confederation Cup final first leg is on this Saturday in Morocco with Moroccan side Renaissance Sportif de Pekana up against Zamalek. Well, I've been speaking to African football expert Nuhu Adams on what we should expect this weekend going into the game.
In the semi-finals, everybody thought they were going to exit after losing 2-0. CAF Congress Cup specialists. They were very impressive, getting 3 goals to make sure they advanced to the final. Zamalek, on the other hand, after losing their first game in the group stages to Bomahia, have not looked back. They are unbeaten in their last 8 matches in the CAF Confederation Cup, and they are in some sort of great form. They haven't lost in their last 4 away games in the CAF Confederation Cup, which is giving them huge advantage over AS Berkane. They have history. They have the records against AS Berkane. But Berkane playing at home, they'll make sure they get at least 2 goals before they go to Egypt for the second leg, and that's how things are going to be very difficult. Zamalek have been very defensive in their last few games, and I think Christian Gross wouldn't change any trainer from his formation or tactics. He's going to defend well against AS Berkane on Sunday. But Berkane, looking at the kind of attack they have in the shape of Kojo Frodolaba from Togo, he can score at any given time in the game. So
And of course, that's African football expert Nuhu Adams with the analysis going into Saturday's game between Moroccan side Renaissance Sportif de Berkane and Zamalek. That's the first leg final of the CAF Confederation Cup. Well, we'll see how that will go. But away from that, the German Bundesliga has become intense and the race for the title is going down to the wire. Now, final day decider between Bayern Munich and Borussia Dortmund. Bayern need just a draw, whilst Dortmund must win their game and hope Bayern drop all 3 points. Well, Dortmund are away to play against Borussia Mönchengladbach, with Bayern at home to Eintracht Frankfurt. Well, I've been speaking to DW's sports journalist Dania Barcelona on what has been a cagey title race.
Bayern had the chance to seal the deal and win their 7th successive Bundesliga title with a win at third place Leipzig, who also happens to be the team with the tightest defense in the Bundesliga, so this was going to be a tough one. Bayern came out strong with Gnabry and Lewandowski having some chances, but Gulaschi, Leipzig's keeper, and their defense showed why they've kept so many clean sheets this season and frustrated Bayern's attack all game. Bayern looked to have broken the deadlock with a Goretzka volley, but the goal was actually controversially disallowed because Lewandowski was called offside by VAR. Something that the Bayern bosses called the biggest joke of the year. It was actually a matter of centimeters. Bayern picked up the pace and saw the better opportunities in this one, but Leipzig really didn't back down and everything ended 0-0 in Leipzig. So Bayern is actually going to have to wait until the last match day against Frankfurt if they want to secure their 7th successive title.
All right, so Dania, they just have to wait on the last day to see if they can secure the Bundesliga title. But tell me about what's happening in terms of the last slot for the Champions League. At a certain point, it was Frankfurt and they were in a comfortable lead. But now things are not the same. What's happening with the Champions League spot?
So this is why you gotta love the Bundesliga. This year's battle for Europe is also a tight one, which, like the Bundesliga title race, will come down to the very last match day. Besides Leipzig, who have already confirmed their place in Champions League next year, we had 6 other teams fighting for those last European spots. They all needed to win. Now Hoffenheim, Wolfsburg, Leverkusen, and Frankfurt all dropped important points this weekend, while Gladbach took full advantage of their stumbling with a big 4-0 win at Nuremberg. So that sees them currently holding on to the last Champions League spot going into the last match day. Bremen picked up a win as well, but their European hope...
Let's see which team will take that last spot. That's the 4th position in the Bundesliga. We already know that the 2 teams that are looking forward to win the Bundesliga is Bayern Munich and Borussia Dortmund. We've talked about Bayern Munich, but Dortmund on the other side, were they able to capitalize on Bayern's frailties of not winning their last game?
Yeah, so Dortmund were able to take 3 successful points against Dusseldorf and keep their slim title hopes alive. But let me tell you, Dusseldorf definitely made them work for it right until the very last minute. Remember, this was the first team to beat Dortmund this year. So Pulisic was playing his last home game for Dortmund, and he gave them a little parting gift, opening up the scoring. But Dortmund's keeper Hitz made a bad mistake, which saw the score level. Delaney put Dortmund ahead, and then Hitz's nightmare continued when he gave away a penalty, which Luca Baio thankfully missed. Götze put the hosts ahead 3-1, but Dusseldorf pulled another one back and then made Dortmund sweat out the final minutes defending set pieces. But Dortmund lived to see another day, and next week, with a little help from Frankfurt and their own win, they could still win this year's Bundesliga title.
All right, so thanks so much to Dania Barcelona for speaking to us this afternoon here on the Locker Room. So remember, you're still here on the Superstation Joy. 99.7 FM is the Locker Room with me, Benedict Owusu, doing this for a regular host, George Adu Jr. But we still have to stay with the German Bundesliga, and my colleague George Adu Jr., who is currently in the UK, joins me with a special preview on what to expect this weekend in the Bundesliga. George is alongside German-based Nigerian journalist Omar Akatugba and Sky Sports Bundesliga reporter Jerome Lang. George?
So, Ben, with the 2018-2019 Bundesliga title to be decided this weekend, the big question is who would hold their nerves in the title race. Now, Bayern were 9 points adrift of Dortmund after match day 15, but are now in pole position to land a 7th successive title with a 2-point lead over their nearest challengers heading into the final weekend. Joining me for some Bundesliga analysis, Omar Akatuba, German-based Nigerian journalist, and of course, Sky Sports Bundesliga reporter Jerome Lang. So guys, we'll talk the games to come shortly, but what a season we've had. Final day approaching and Dortmund and Bayern are in with a real chance. Was this title Dortmund's to lose from the start?
Yes, it's been an entertaining season, but of course attributed to the fact that both teams have exhibited high level of deficiencies, talking about Borussia Dortmund and Bayern Munich, who are usually the favorite to win the league season in, season out. And just to note that this is the first time since 2010 the Bundesliga title race will go down the final day. And of course, it confirms what we've said. This is not something that is common in Germany, because you always have a situation where Bayern Munich are champions even with 2-3 games to spare. But here we are with one game to go. We don't know who the champions of the Bundesliga are. And that somehow presents a lot of football fans some massive entertainment. But again, like I said, this is because both teams have not been very spectacular this season. You look at Bayern, how they themselves have also contrived to make the league drag to the final. They haven't drawn in Nuremberg, Freiburg, and of course last weekend in Leipzig. You will not be surprised to see that they've not been able to win the league even with just one game to go. And that is what has made, the season an entertaining one.
Well, Lang, let me bring it to the discussion. And don't you think Bayern Munich were just able to right the wrongs?
Yeah, I totally agree with you. It was a crazy season with a lot of surprises. Like we've had unexpected top teams, and top teams like Bayern Munich struggling a lot during the season. But I think it's coming to an end now, and it's going to get really hard for Dortmund to get the title because Bayern Munich is just a too experienced side to lose this game. It's just what they do for the last years, winning the important games in the league.
Well, an interesting story that has been building up all season. But let me stay with you, Lang. And would you call the Bayern Munich clawback then remarkable, or really you feel it's a function of how Dortmund lost this way?
I think the comeback of Bayern Munich over the last 2 months was remarkable, especially as there was a lot of pressure from the public, from the media, from the fans on the team, which is not easy because they can only lose with all the pressure. There's nothing to win really, but they did really good, and they did a remarkable comeback. And I also think it wasn't an easy situation for Dortmund because they had a good lead of a few points and the lead was comfortable. And I think they lost concentration a little bit too much. And also you just see that the side is not very experienced yet, with players like Jadon Sancho, with players like Pulisic, still very young. And you've seen that over the last games, especially in the direct game against Bayern Munich.
Finally, guys, Dortmund are away to Borussia Mönchengladbach, and Bayern Munich host Eintracht Frankfurt at home. Of course, we're both having a chance over next in the ultimates. Which game will be more difficult to win? Let me start with you, Lang.
I think it's both very, very hard games. Mönchengladbach is a squad with very, very high-class players. However, Frankfurt is the team of the season so far, with an extraordinary season, especially in the Euro League. And from Frankfurt, they're a mentality team, so they will always fight. And especially, I think they want to end the season as good as they can, because it was one of the best seasons in the club's history. Frankfurt this season can beat any team, and that's a big threat for Bayern Munich, and they really have to concentrate a lot. On the other side, I think that Dortmund has nothing to lose this game, and they will just play as good as they can, as offensive as they can. I expect a win for Borussia Dortmund and Bayern Munich, but the win for Bayern Munich will be much harder.
Omar, do you think about this any differently?
I think that both games will be absolutely difficult. But when you imagine that Bayern will be playing at the Allianz Arena, a stadium where they've shown over the years that they are difficult to beat at, you can say that Bayern would have it quite easier. Both games will be massive, I can tell you. You look at Borussia Mönchengladbach, they've had also a very good season when you look at their history. Although they played in the Champions League not quite long, and now they have a chance of coming back again. And that confirms how good they've been this season. And they are at home against Borussia Dortmund, and that is also a derby because both teams are located in the North Rhine-Westphalen region. I think that the one in Gladbach will be a much more difficult game to win.
So we look forward to an electrifying final day of the German Bundesliga 2018-2019 season. And of course, the winner will be unveiled no matter what. Thank you very much, Omar Akatuba, German-based Nigerian journalist, and Sky Sports Bundesliga reporter Jerome Lang. Benedict Owusu is back to you.
All right, thank you very much, George Adi Jr. there with the Bundesliga preview. Well, what a weekend we have in terms of what's going to happen in the German Bundesliga. Bayern Munich are hoping to win another Bundesliga title. They are home to Eintracht Frankfurt, and they just have to win to clinch another Bundesliga title. And for Borussia Dortmund, they will be praying that Bayern will lose that game. And of course, if they're able to win against Borussia Mönchengladbach, and it will be a title for them this season in the Bundesliga. So definitely, we'll talk about that as well as three main key issues we're going to talk about here on the show. You have to join us with your comment on our WhatsApp line, which is 0244 340 437. Same on Telegram, 0244 340 437. Allegri says he's going to leave Juventus at the end of the season. They've got 2 more matches to play, and that's what is coming from Italy. We'll talk about that. We also will look at the FA Cup final, the English FA Cup final. Is happening this weekend. Manchester City up against Watford. And of course, Pep Guardiola is hoping to become the first manager to win a domestic treble. Well, to win a domestic treble. I will explain that. And also, we'll try and see if we can do some transfers before we call it a show. I am Benedict Owusu, and this is Locker Room here on the Superstation Joy 99.7 FM. But let's stay in Europe and this time get the BBC two-way from our partners, the BBC. Well, George had a lovely chat with the BBC's Mas Faruqi on everything to expect this weekend.
So thanks, Maz, for your time, and such a pleasure to be doing this from the BBC Media City in Manchester. Let's get on to the business of the weekend then, and all eyes will be on Wembley for the FA Cup final between Manchester City and Watford. Will motivation be enough, though, for Watford to cause an upset in London?
Quite difficult, isn't it, to see past Manchester City in this one, George. When we look at the way that they've been playing in recent weeks in the English Premier League, all those wins on the bounce to make sure they got the title ahead of Liverpool. And although Watford obviously had that exciting comeback in their semi-final against Wolves and ended up obviously edging past them in injury time, I really can't see Watford really causing that much of an upset. Yes, they're into their second FA Cup final, their first in 35 years, in fact, when they play Manchester City on Saturday. But I think it'll be really, really tough for them to cause an upset against Manchester City. And of course, City are on course for the first domestic treble. If they win the FA Cup final, they obviously add that to the league title that I've already mentioned and the League Cup win that when they beat Chelsea on penalties earlier this year. So I think for them, there's real motivation to try and make a bit of history as well.
Well, the treble means that it'll be a great opportunity, Mas, then to see the parade on Monday. We'll be looking forward to that.
I know you're going to that, George.
Yes, of course, Mas. So let's talk about Chelsea now. And what most fans dreaded seems to be playing up nicely. Reports from Spain have it that Eden Hazard may be on his way to Madrid after the Europa League final. What more do we know?
Well, Eden Hazard, the player himself, has apparently already said that decision has been made even before the Europa League final is played. That's obviously played in Baku in Azerbaijan in a couple of weeks' time. And we do expect that really to be his final appearance for Chelsea. I think really inevitably all Chelsea fans, I know you're a massive Chelsea fan, George, but I think we're expecting Eden Hazard to be wearing a Real Madrid shirt come the end of the close season, aren't we? I really think that that's what we expect the move to be. I think that's where we're expecting to be come the end of the European summer. And I think Chelsea obviously themselves expect that as well. Maurizio Sarri saying that, the decision is down to the player at the end of the Premier League season last weekend when he was asked about it in his post-match press conference. I think even Chelsea now, and the fans even, you could see them last weekend thanking the player with banners at Stamford Bridge. I think even they realise now he's really given 7 years, is it now, to the club, and really it's time for him to be allowed to move on, and I think that will happen.
Well, Eden Hazard away from Chelsea, who gets in at Manchester United. And there's enough indication that it's going to be a lot of activity in the just open transfer window. United have reassured Ole Gunnar Solskjaer of massive financial backing. But Mars, will that be enough to give the Red Devils the lift they so desire?
I think it's going to be really tough, George, isn't it? I mean, the problem that we've got at Old Trafford now is that there's no Champions League football at Manchester United next season, and that's obviously the real draw, isn't it, for players? And I think it's less really of an issue of well, obviously there's a huge issue about who they attract, but also the players that might leave. We all talk about David De Gea, whether he's off to Paris Saint-Germain or another club in the summer. Also Paul Pogba, what's going on with him? Is he going to leave? There's so many issues about that Ole Gunnar Solskjaer has got to sort, and I think really it's going to be really, really hard for them to kind of attract the quality of players that a club like Manchester United expects when they're not in the Champions League next season.
Right, Mars, let's end with what you've made of the teams still pushing for Premier League participation next season. Aston Villa and Derby County have sealed the real tussle in some 10 days to come at Wembley, but considering the strength of Leeds and yet still getting knocked out, is it safe to say the teams who would eventually get promoted have Premiership temperament?
Well, everybody wants to do a Wolves, don't they, next season?
Yes.
Everybody wants to be that team that's newly promoted and has the kind of record that Wolves have, where they ended up being best of the rest, if you like, behind the top six, and having such a great record against the top teams as well. I think Pep Guardiola said, didn't he, in October or November, that Wolves were one of the best sides that his team had ever faced, and I think all the teams want to be able to do that. Playoff final is obviously such a massive match because of the idea of being able to play Premier League football next season. I think Aston Villa and Derby County, it will be very interesting. Obviously, you've got Frank Lampard in charge of Derby County now against John Terry, his old teammate. I know two Chelsea legends for you, George. On the backroom team at Aston Villa, so that'll be a very interesting dynamic to look at. I mean, I don't know of those teams who will edge it. Obviously, Derby County missed out to QPR about 5-6 years ago in the playoff final, so perhaps there's memories of that still for them. But I think both of those sides, whoever gets through that, could really add some quality to the Premier League. They're both really kind of big clubs, if you like, aren't they, in England? But also as well, we've got Norwich, obviously, who are getting promoted, who have done really well. But it's always really hard to be able to judge how these teams will perform in the Premier League. You just don't have that much time that you have in the second tier in the Championship to play as you do in the Premier League. You have less time in the Premier League, so I think it'll be really, really difficult to know kind of how it'll play out. But normally, what do we think? One side of the three stay up? Which one do you reckon, George, will stay up?
Well, I think I want to see Derby County.
Yeah? Do you think Derby are going to get through against Villa?
I think Derby are going to get through there. I think they're going to get through.
I think Villa are going to get through. Yeah. That's just because you love Frank Lampard.
Yeah, I love Frank Lampard. It's a difficult one. But I think any of the two will be fine, I think so.
Well, yeah, I mean, Norwich obviously haven't had a great time in recent years up there. It's just really, really hard to predict. But obviously, they all want to do a Wolves, don't they? And Nuno Espirito Santo is my manager of the Premier League, I think, this season. So
I think I agree with that as well. He's been really good, but it's difficult to take it away from Pep.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But we'll see what happens.
That's right. Mas, thank you very much for your time. Then we look forward to a wonderful weekend.
Alright, so thanks so much to George Adu Jr. and the BBC's Mas Faruqi for bringing us the BBC two-way this weekend. Of course, it sets out for a very nice way to start our discussion here on the show. You can also join us 0244 340 437, 0244 340 437, both on WhatsApp and on Telegram. My colleague Oroku Ampofo is with me in the studio. Hi Oroku, how are you?
Hi Benedict, I'm good.
Yes, that's great. Charged up for the discussion this afternoon. We've got three main issues we're going to look at. First, we'll look at what's going to happen in England this weekend. The English FA Cup final between Manchester City and Watford. And then we'll take a look at Allegri. He says he's leaving Juventus at the end of the season, and some bit of transfer news and speculations all coming through. We'll do that here. But let's start with what's going to happen in England. That's the English FA Cup. Well, the Premier League season is over, but the English season is not over because there's one more trophy to play, and that's the English FA Cup. Manchester City can they do the trouble? And first, before I even answer that question, explain, because I've had a lot of people ask me, treble, which treble are we talking about?
Well, you know that in England, what usually happens is that you play for your league and you play in the FA Cup, but unlike other countries, there is a second local cup, and that is the League Cup. It used to be called the Carabao Cup, if you also want to call it that, but
it's called the Carabao Cup now.
Yeah, so if you want to call it the three trophies available domestically. So if a team wins all three, then yes, that's a domestic treble. But what people are used to is usually winning a league and one of these local cups, either the FA Cup or the League Cup, and then the Champions League, and that's what everyone is used to.
All right, so it's very clear. We have to make the distinction between the domestic treble and then the treble out there. So what as Alex Ferguson won when he was Manchester United manager was
he won the European
exactly. So he won the European Cup, that's the UEFA Champions League, and then won the English Premier League as well as the English FA Cup. And Pep is going to become the first manager in history to do this in England. How big is this for him?
I think
if he's able to do it.
Yeah, I think this was really the next step if he didn't bring that Champions League trophy home. And I think that this is what will make his season a successful one and probably make people forget about his little blip in the Champions League. And to end the season this way, I think would be very strong for Manchester City. And I think that would give them a basis to build on for next season. I think that it's imperative that they do not slip up in this game and actually manage to win this FA Cup. From an individual point of view, we all know how much trouble Pep Guardiola went through during his first season in the Premier League.
He didn't win anything, and for the very first time in his managerial career, went trophyless in a season.
Yeah, so he did go through a lot, and I think that he would be having the last laugh if he does manage to rack up the third trophy in England, and that would put the stamp on Manchester City that they are the big club in England now. They are the ones to chase. So it's going to be a big one. You know, after the last game against Brighton, Kevin De Bruyne was pictured saying to Pep Guardiola that you are... I cannot say that word on there, but he said that to him because he loves to win.
Yeah.
So he's saying that Pep Guardiola is very greedy and he loves to win each single game. And that's the mentality that all the players keep on talking about. So they would definitely go into this weekend
and of course,
knowing that they have to win.
If you've ever seen the All or Nothing documentary on Manchester City, you definitely have an idea of what Ulrich is talking about. But, you know, on paper, Man City looks good.
Yeah.
But there's a cup game. Anything can happen. It's just a one-off game. You think Watford can do something?
Yeah, of course. They are here because they do deserve to be there. They had an incredible comeback against Watford, against Wolves, a lot of W teams in the Premier League, but they were 2-0 down against Wolverhampton side, and they managed to come back from that to win 3-2, and it just shows the fighting spirit that they do have. There's been a lot of talks about Nuno Espirito Santo and what he has done with Wolves, but I think that Javi Gracia has also done a very, very fantastic work with this Watford side. And incredibly, a lot of European newspapers out there and websites, when they put their odds out there at the beginning of the season, about 70 to 80% of them predicted that Watford would be relegated this season. And he has managed to help them finish in the top 10 and taking them to a cup final. So they shouldn't be written off. I think that they do have some good individual players there, the likes of Gerard Deulofeu and Troy Deeney coming in there. They could make the difference. And let's not forget that Roberto Martinez actually defeated City with Wigan in the FA Cup final. So it has happened before. Hull City took a 2-0 lead against Arsenal. Unfortunately, they blew it. But it just shows that the FA Cup has a tendency of causing upset, and you cannot write anyone off, especially on such a day.
And for you, City wins it, right?
I think they would have too much in their armory to, you know, lose to a Watford side.
Alright, so what do you also think for Rukwampa for City? Of course, we'll go into that game as favourites. Let me hear what you also think. That's 0244 340 437, 0244 340 437 on both WhatsApp and Telegram. So that game is happening this weekend, Manchester City and Watford. And if they should win, Pep Guardiola will become the first manager in history to win the domestic treble. That's never happened before. He has already won the League Cup. He defeated Chelsea on penalties. He has won the English Premier League. That was last weekend. This weekend, he has a game against Watford. We'll see how that will go. But away from that, manager Massimiliano Allegri will leave Serie A champions Juventus at the end of the season. Well, the Italian has won the league title in each of his 5 seasons since taking charge in 2014. Juventus, who signed Cristiano Ronaldo last summer for £99.2 million, reached the quarterfinals of the Champions League this season and then the Coppa Italia this season. And for the very first time, we've had a new, for the very first time in 4 years, we've had a new winner for the Coppa Italia. And they have 2 league games remaining this season, starting with Atalanta at home on Sunday, and then the last one will come against Sampdoria. So those 2 matches are going to be his last 2 games. But just to give you an idea of what he's done since he took charge of the team in 2014, he's played 269 games, 191 wins. That's an average of 71%, and 510 goals, scored 5 Serie A titles, 4 Coppa Italia, 2 Supercoppa Italiana, and 2 Champions League runner-ups. So if you're looking at the number of titles he's won 11 titles since taking charge in 2014. That's very impressive, not that bad from manager Allegri Origo.
I think so, and it's pretty unfair if you are coming from a neutral point of view that you look at a coach who, for the first time ever in Italy, he won the double back to back for 4 times from 2014 to the 2018 season, and he would always bring you at least the Serie A and the Coppa Italia. And I think one thing that every Juventus fan wants is the Champions League, and he was given 5 years to bring that, and unfortunately he came close quite a number of times. Cristiano Ronaldo prevented him
close twice.
2 times. Ronaldo prevented him 2 times. He brought in Ronaldo and still couldn't do it. So I think that was the icing on top of the cake, the fact that you got the best player, arguably the best player in the world, in your team, and you seem to have taken a step back in terms of your performances in the Champions League. Last 2 seasons they got to the semi-final, and this time they couldn't even get to the semi-final. They were knocked out by Ajax in the quarterfinal. So in that regard, you can say that Allegri probably has done his best, and the fight has been fought. But the key issue with this Juventus side was about how they were playing. And they haven't played their best football this season. And you can even look at how they won the league this season. It wasn't attractive. Games against Lazio that they were just so lucky.
And I mentioned
weren't playing well.
First time they couldn't get to the finals of the Coppa Italia.
There were moments where it looked as if they didn't know how to play football, and their attacking aspect was quite low, getting a little bit too dependent on Cristiano Ronaldo. Dybala was missing the whole season, and that first leg in Atletico was absolutely poor. And it's just been a lot of question marks in terms of the commitment of the players. But one thing to note is that the brother of Dybala, who happens to be his agent, is saying right now that Dybala is not happy and he's going to leave, and a lot of other players too are not happy. Now, I do not know the relationship between Cristiano Ronaldo and the other players, but it seems as if since his introduction, it hasn't been the best of comes at Juventus, with a lot of players.
The reason why the manager has decided to leave at the end of the season?
Well, I cannot tell what is going on in there, but there is some form of stiffness in that Juventus club. Players not happy, players not getting enough game time, the football being centered around Ronaldo, other players not getting a chance, and it looks like a whole big mess for Juventus right now, and they would need to solve that quickly, considering that everyone is rebuilding this summer.
Okay, so let's quickly talk about his next move and the possible replacement. We've heard names: Pochettino, Jose Mourinho, Arsene Wenger. I mean, what do you think will be his next? I don't know why you're laughing. I just made mention of Arsene Wenger in the but what do you think will be his next move?
I think for Allegri, he still has a lot in him. He's quite young. He's proved that he's a good coach, and there are a lot of teams out there, the likes of PSG, Manchester United, Bayern. They are not so certain on their coach right now due to their performances.
Could he end up in England?
I think so. I think so. With the type of pragmatic football that he plays, England would be the best place for him. But for who would come into that Juventus job, That's a tricky one because
Arsene Wenger, of course.
No, not Arsene Wenger, not Jose Mourinho. Those two guys have
It could be Pochettino.
Yeah, it could be Pochettino. Pochettino probably, if he wins the Champions League with Spurs, I think he's going to leave
But that
if
would
he
be
wins
difficult.
it.
I don't think they'll win it.
He said he's good. Yeah, of course. It has to be difficult from your point of view. But yeah, I think Conte is a good candidate and probably the most possible one to complete as soon as possible because he doesn't have a job and
How about Ancelotti?
Ancelotti, yeah, he has experience in the Champions League too. But I just think Conte has a rapport with Juventus. You know that he brought them out of the dark when they went into the second division after their whole bribery scandal. He brought them up there and won the league with them. But yeah, Conte, Ancelotti, and also don't forget Inzaghi.
Yeah, Inzaghi.
He's also been linked with the job. So a lot of names up there. Should be interesting times to look ahead for Juventus.
All right, so we'll see how that will go. We'll definitely find time and talk about this Allegri issue. The only Bayern Munich supporter in Koforidua will surely win the Bundesliga this weekend, Harry, inside Koforidua. Very good afternoon to you, Harry. You can also send your 024 for 340-437, 024-340-437. Okay, let's quickly talk about some transfers. And Zaha. If Zaha is leaving Crystal Palace, where do you think he will be heading to? £100 million. Is that not too much for him?
Yeah, I think that's a tad bit too much, and he's going nowhere. He's going nowhere because I think that no club in Europe would pay £100 million for Wilfred Zaha, because even Cristiano Ronaldo went to Juventus for £88 million, and you have the likes of Jovic, who has done it in Europe, going to Real Madrid for 60 million. Wilfred Zaha is nowhere close to 100 million. At best, I think a 30, 40, maybe 50 million. And he may get a club.
All right,
but it's probably a move by Crystal Palace to ensure that he doesn't go anywhere.
All right, then how about Griezmann? Because this week he announced he was not going to stay at Atletico Madrid after spending 5 years. He's paid his dues, right? And you think it's right for him to leave? But where do you think will be his destination?
Yeah, I think it's a right move for him. It's time in his career to take that big step. And if you're taking that big step, it has to be a bigger club. And he's been linked with the likes of Manchester City, PSG, FC Barcelona, and Manchester United. I think that the Barcelona one probably does have the most weight because there's been various reports that there's already agreements between the two. For PSG, Tuchel, that's the coach, has already said in the press conference today that it's a bit unrealistic. For Man City, I don't think so. Manchester United, no Champions League, I do not think so. So I see him going to FC Barcelona.
Morocco, thank you so much this afternoon. Definitely, you hear from Morocco again next week on the show. We'll do more in terms of the transfer talk. Well, some of the 24 qualified teams for the Africa Cup of Nations have named their provisional squad, with others like Ghana expected to do that on Monday. Well, Nigeria have recalled Mikel Obi, who last played for the team after the 2014 World Cup in Brazil. Now, tonight on our Joy AFCON podcast show, that plus other stories regarding the tournament will be looked at. Well, Gary Smith, host of the program, gives us an idea of what more to expect.
Today on the Joy AFCON podcast, the team take a preemptive look at Ghana's team that's going to the African Cup of Nations. In short, we are going to name our own squad that we think should go to the African Cup of Nations. Let's know what you think as well. Plus, the usual team profiles of some of the teams of the tournament. And then we'll have a wide-ranging interview with celebrated African broadcaster Thomas Kwenaite of South Africa as well. A special guest will be joining us to look at the East African teams that will be at this Cup of Nations. All that and more from 7 to 8 p.m. on Joy 99.7 FM. It's the Joy AFCON podcast. Please join us.
All right, so you definitely have to tune in to the Joy AFCON podcast here on the Superstation Joy 99.7 FM. It's happening from 7 to 8. Gary Smith will be here. Well, he talked about the Ugandan journalist who is going to be here. Well, I'm just going to let you know. Asha Kumugisha will be on the show this evening, so you just have to listen. And the hashtag is Joy AFCON. Joy AFCON. My name is Benedict Tosu. Thanks so much for your company. We are back same time next week for another exciting edition of the program. Enjoy the rest of your day.